Ben, during this kind of clash with Punk, you've been calling yourself the real best in the world. Do you feel like this feud has kind of brought out that guy who everyone thought or everyone saw as the best wrestler in the world for a good part of your career, that he's still in here and he's coming back out again?
I feel like this feud has made me realize that I'm tired of hearing people say, what if? What if he hadn't got hurt? What if he didn't have to relinquish the title? What if, he had to remain champion? And those what ifs have been asked for 10 years now. You can learn a lot from a win, but you can learn a lot more from a defeat. And the defeat in Belfast, although it stung, I learned to stop asking myself what if and start asking myself when. Like, when are you going to fix this? Like, and given the recent change in landscape in the business with like Cena retiring and now AJ retiring, and me feeling like I've always looked up to and admired AJ so much, and John obviously, but
Yeah,
I felt like me and AJ have had a similar career path. But
yeah,
he was just like always a couple of years ahead of me, but he was always that benchmark of, you know, the person that you look up to on how they perform, how they carry themselves in and outside of the ring. Um, and then seeing him retire kind of made me realize that, oh, clock's ticking for me too. Um, and, perhaps it's just around the corner. And then it got me thinking, well, when are you gonna when are you gonna fix this? When are you gonna clean this stain off your career? When are you gonna rectify, you know, in everyone else's minds, the wrong that happened 10 years ago? Because for me, it's not really, a lot of people see it as a as a tragedy, as a failure. Uh, but I see it completely the other way. I see it as a success because I grew up in a small town in Ireland, in a country with no wrestling schools, no wrestling promotion, barely wrestling on the TV. And I moved to England to study catch wrestling with the goal of having one match. And 16 years later, I debut on Raw. I pinned Roman my first night. 3 weeks later, I pinned Seth in my first pay per view. I become champion. That sounds like a success story to me, not like a
yeah.
failure.
When you talk about that quick progression of the main roster, when you do get hurt, is it hard to imagine that it's been a decade, that at that point that like a year later, hey, he would probably win the title. Like, do you think yourself at that point would believe, hey, no world championship for a decade later, considering where you were at that point in your career?
You know, but we're going back to it again, right?
Yeah, we'll
People,
move on from it
but,
after
but
that.
no, 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 no. I want to address this, right? Because people, for some reason, don't consider winning the United States Championship a success.
Yeah,
Multiple time Intercontinental Champion. That's not a success. 6-time Tag Team Champion. That's not a success. Go back to NXT, have one of the best runs of your career. That's
correct.
somehow not a success. So I realize that no matter what I do, no matter how many great matches I put on, or no matter how many championships I win, the people will never be satisfied unless I win the world title. And of course, selfishly, I'm doing this for myself, but I'm also doing it for the doubters, for the critics, and for everyone who's asked me, what if you never got hurt, Finn? Because I don't, I don't think that way. I look forward. I don't look backwards. But for the last 10 years, being kind of reminded of that, like one little hiccup, one little speed bump in the
Yeah.
career gets pretty annoying, you know?
So what would it mean to beat Punk and spoil this main event that everybody has ready and put that behind you?
It would, there's all this talk in wrestling about like finishing a story. If
Yeah.
you gotta finish the story, and everyone's saying, "Oh, Finn's gotta finish his story." But I don't feel like I need to like finish the story at all. I need to like completely rewrite the narrative because like this narrative of what if has been going on for 10 years. And this is my chance to fix it. And I realize that the clock is ticking on the amount of opportunities I'm going to have to fix it. And today's the day.
What went into the decision to kind of go back to your NXT music, and kind of use that again with like I said, with where you are right now?
The idea to go back to it was really just, it's like you're at a fist fight and you got a gun in your pocket and you're getting your ass beat and you're not using the gun. Right. So the idea was, look, I knew I was fighting for the world championship. It was in my home country. I knew the crowd were going to be behind me. Um, and I said, you know what? Let's really like add a little spice to this, jazz it up, and let's give them everything. And the idea was going to be a once off. Hadn't really thought any further than like that one Monday night. And it was pretty well received and I felt good. I felt so good because the crowd was so loud that I couldn't even hear the music and I missed the light cue. But no, we're definitely going to stick with that going forward.
You had said, I think, in a past interview that, hey, when the demon character got to the main roster, it kind of got a little confusing and the thing you didn't want to use it, but you kind of left the door open of like, hey, if I did use it again, I'd want some creative control over it. If it was time to kind of reboot it, what do you think would be the most important thing that you would want to, either have control of or want to do with it to say, if we're going to reboot it, we have to do at least this?
Even if you say I left the door open for the demon, but even if you close the door on the demon, the demon's just going to kick that door down. So, look, there's a time and there's a time and a place for everything. Just like the music, there was, there was a right time to bring it back, and there will be a right time in the future to bring the demon back. But I feel like right now, this is, this Finn and Punk story is about Finn and Punk, and it's not about anything else. And sure, in the future, I would like to present the demon in the best way I think I can present it. But until that like moment comes, it's not something like I'm focused on. I'm focused on winning the world title and removing this stain from my career that's been there for 10 years. And Finn has to do that.
Obviously, AJ's retirement and AJ has meant, a lot to you. Do you have a quick story or an anecdote that kind of just either says what type of person he is or or epitomizes what he meant to you?
I'll tell you a story. It was probably around the year 2002, and it was Corpus Christi, Texas, and there was an NWA anniversary convention show on. And me and a couple of NWA UK Hammerlock boys had traveled to Corpus for the event. And it was a couple of days before the event. We went out downtown and we were having a couple cups of coffee. And it came time to go home, and we'd no ride. And this is, before there was Ubers and all that stuff. So Hot Stuff Hernandez and AJ Styles had a pickup truck, and they were driving back to the hotel. So me, Johnny Moss, and Paul Tracy jumped in the back of the pickup truck in Corpus Christi at 2:30 a.m. and drove over that big bridge in Corpus over the bay, over to the hotel. And that's just a memory I'll never forget, because the boys were not willing to leave us on our own to find our own way home. So they took care of us. And that's a story I don't think even AJ remembers, but it's one I do for sure.
Finn, I appreciate the time. I think all of us are hoping that at some point, that title is around your waist, and maybe it'll be this weekend.
Hope so.